and welcome to What Makes You Stronger with me, your host, Chantel Fisher. Today in the studio, we have Greg Rutter, and we'll be talking about grief and loss. If you've experienced grief and loss of a loved one, this episode is for you. We are going to learn how Greg has tackled loss and overcome grief, and ultimately, we're going to learn what makes him stronger. Let's go. Hey, Greg, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for the invitation, Chantel. It's an honor to be invited to the podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Now, this conversation that you and I are having has been a long time coming. What do you think?
I think you've probably gotten bits of pieces of everything that we're about to talk about over the last 5 years. But when I look back over those 5 years, man, the hits, the changes in roles and responsibilities for me, priorities, it's been quite a ride.
Well, if you say that I've only gotten bits and pieces, then I'm happy that we have this space to just dive a bit deeper for the audience, because there are people out there who are experiencing grief, who are in the thick of it, and they feel alone. And sometimes when you're in grief, which sometimes you can't see a way out. You can't see past the grief. So I'm really glad that we're talking about this now.
Cool. Yeah, I'm happy to dig into it. I learned some pretty profound things through my journey of grief.
Yes. So, Greg, tell us who you are,
Fair
How do
enough.
you know me?
These days, I define myself mainly as a father. That's the primary role I see myself in. But when you and I first met, I was a financial advisor. I am a champion member of the Manheim Township Class of '98 state champion quiz bowl team, nationally ranked. I've defined myself as a scholar, a historian, a political scientist, an Ivy Leaguer, lots of different things. Right now, I would say dad is the main thing because I don't think that what I do for a living defines who I am as a person. But I've always placed a lot of value on knowledge, reason, logic, and intellect. And those are tools that can help you deal with grief, but I don't think they are enough in and of themselves. And that's something that I learned in through some of the things I'm about to share with you.
Well, thank you, Greg. I like the way you summarize yourself. And I agree with you when you say that what you do doesn't necessarily define who you are. And you've mentioned a lot of different things about, who you are. And you said political scientist? Now, I know your background was poli-sci,
Back on it.
but
I've never left. I just actually, it's funny because through the decade I was a financial advisor, I kind of kept my politics under wraps because you don't want to see blue or red when you're managing money. You want to see green. Democrats and Republicans both have portfolios to manage. So that really, really helped me to put my political philosophies, perspectives, ideas into perspective and kind of move away from everything being about politics.
that makes sense. So I've been meaning to ask you this, and you've told me this many, many times. You've shared stories and stuff. But for the audience and for me again, Greg, tell me about your dad. Tell me about who he was.
My dad is Gregory H. Rutter. I'm Gregory H. Rutter II, not Junior. It's a long story involving my mom not wanting me to have the nickname Chip, I believe, but I was named after him. And dad was many things. Dad was the captain of the McCaskey football team. Dad was the guy that saved a little girl drowning in a frozen pond when he was 17 years old.
Oh my
Dad
God.
played football at Princeton University. Dad worked for Delmarva making window frames and was handy and could really swing a hammer.
Yeah.
Dad was a graduate of Princeton who went on to become a portfolio manager and vice president at Morgan Stanley. He was an unbelievable intellect, mostly self made, never really had any financial help from his parents, who divorced when he was very young, causing him to become the man of the house. He had a younger brother who was afflicted with anger issues and substance abuse issues and didn't live past my 24th birthday. He was a
Hmm.
complex guy. He was married twice, first to my mom and then to his second wife, Fern. champion powerlifter, and a hell of a standard to have set when you're trying to define yourself as a man.
I think just the way you, wow. I think your dad would be very proud in the way that you described him and the way that you've noted all of his accomplishments. I think the way you spoke about your dad and summed him up, going back to how you summed yourself up, I'm like, man, you gotta, sum yourself up like that, that was very, very nice, Greg.
I'm much more impressed by my father than I am by myself.
Was he your hero, do you think?
He was absolutely my hero. And despite being a champion strength athlete, a football player, this towering intellect, it was his wisdom that was the most profound thing about him. His ability to see to the heart of an issue and then kind of gently lead you towards what he thought was the right answer with kindness and compassion. My son, Buddy, everyone loves Buddy. Buddy can be a lot. Buddy has ADHD. Buddy talks too fast. Buddy doesn't necessarily think before he moves. And everyone who loves him gets frustrated with my son, except for one guy. And his grandfather never once lost his patience with his grandson, Gregory H. Rutter III, the third namesake.
Can you give us an example of how your father would handle an interaction with Buddy and then versus how you might have handled that same interaction?
Dad always knew that nothing was a crisis but a crisis. So let's say Buddy was running through the kitchen, throwing some toys around, and it landed in a pan of hot bacon. If nobody was burned and nothing was on fire, Grandpa would just kind of gently take Buddy aside, explain to him why he couldn't be doing what he was doing without yelling at him, correct him with affection and gentleness, and then go clean up the mess. Whereas Dad'd be screaming his head off. You can't do that. You're going to get burned. Bacon grease catch grease blah, blah, blah. But Grandpa didn't do that. Grandpa, would make sure there was no danger first and then just kind of calmly teach. And I think it's part of who he was as a person, but I also think 25 years in financial services as a trusted advisor, a counselor, leading intelligent people to what he believed to be the right decisions, really taught him a lot about how to communicate, how to teach, and how to connect.
And the patience too, because it's
And the patience.
because when you're dealing with people's money, and making those hard decisions and sometimes having to talk people off ledges, who might want to do something crazy with their portfolio. I'm sure you have many stories. I'm sure your dad has shared some stories.
Reason and logic can leave the building. As we like to say, you find out what your real risk tolerance is when the market's down 30%.
Oh my goodness. So was your dad the biggest reason why you got into finances, Greg?
He was. I actually spent my 20s trying to do everything but. Starting out with opening up a brew pub with my uncle and my cousin outside of Philly as a young man right out of college, and then moving to LA with the idea that I might become a screenwriter. I spent my 20s trying to get as far away from Lancaster and as far away from managing money as I possibly could. And then, fast forward a decade, I'm 30, married, not sure where life is headed, but knowing I wanted to settle down and start a family. And Lancaster, Pennsylvania seemed like a pretty decent place to land after the dream life in LA didn't pan out. And then, Dad
Isn't
said
it,
to me,
isn't it crazy how PA is always the place that people usually land when they're coming back home and starting families and stuff? I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I went to California and now I'm back in PA." It's like, what?
I'm really thankful. I think both of my kids understand that Lancaster's a really great place to be from. And I don't think my brother or I, when we were in our teens, thought of it that way. We were dying to get to DC or Philly or New York or somewhere other than here. And here's a great place to be.
Yeah, I think so. And I cut you off midstream. What were you gonna say? Do you remember?
Uh, oh, yeah. So Dad told me, I briefly had a cup of coffee with AXA when I was 23. And they wanted me to get my life and health insurance license and go out and start selling whole life insurance policies while I studied for my Series 7. And didn't feel like this was designed to help the client. It was about closing business first and foremost. And so I didn't last. And when Dad recruited me for Morgan Stanley, he said, when you were 23, you weren't ready to do this, and you are now. You needed some miles on the car. You needed to get some wisdom under your belt if you're going to actually counsel people. And you, at 23, you were smart, but you weren't wise.
My goodness, what an observant thing to say. And I guess that's that's why he's your dad. That's why he was, he knew you best, and he was also looking out for the clients. And, just because you're his son, he didn't want to pull you in. He wanted to make sure that you were a right fit.
And he didn't want to hand me anything. He wanted to make sure that it was something that I wanted to do, that I was going to be good at, that I could do well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So tell me about his later years. Did you guys know that he was gonna decline right away, or was it sudden?
So the official enemy of the Rutter family is pancreatic cancer. That's what my dad died from. It also killed our friend Alex Trebek. For those of you who don't know the story of my brother Brad, greatest or second greatest Jeopardy player of all time, depending on who you ask. That's a story for another day. But Dad told us he was sick right around Father's Day of 2020, after everything started to open up from COVID. We had just been through it. The dog we adopted during COVID needed to have a toe amputated. Kristen's car bit the dust. I'm sorry, I'd say Kristen's car. We bought Kristen a Mazda Speed 3 hatchback, but a hot hatch, when Ella was born, to be her mom car. And then we upgraded to a CX-9 later. When my A4 died, I just took over the hot hatchback, and it was fun to drive, so no sweat there. That died on getting onto Route 30 the weekend we were supposed to go to the Adirondacks with the one-toed dog. And I thought, man, things just can't go right. And then we get back and we go over to Dad's for Father's Day, and he tells us that he's been diagnosed with cancer, pancreatic cancer. And if you don't know about pancreatic cancer, it's tough to treat, low survivability, and it moves really fast. So mid-June, Dad told us he was sick, and he did not make it to see September.
What did you feel in that moment when your dad told you guys and let you guys know?
First and foremost, scared. Uh, I couldn't imagine a world without him in it. He was the founding member of the financial team I was on. He was my dad. He was my kid's grandpa. He was the guy I turned to for advice, for wisdom. He was the house I went to for the holidays. He was my favorite guy to watch Eagles games with. And it was just to take all that away from me. It's like, what did I have left? Yes, my wife, my kids, but he was a part of every moment of that. We're talking about a man who decided he was done with his first marriage and stuck it out for an extra year and a half so as not to ruin my wedding, because that's just who he was, always thinking of others, always giving. And I was scared. I was angry. I mean, the 5 stages of grief, right? But at first it was just first disbelief, like this can't possibly be happening, and then fear and anger. What am I going to do? What are my kids going to do? To this day, I get more upset that my son lost his best friend than that I lost my dad. Because those two,
Mm.
like I said, he was the only person who never lost his patience with Buddy. And really, to this day, it makes me sad that my son had that taken away from him so young.
I can absolutely feel that coming from you through the screen. And I'm gonna keep it together. I'm gonna keep it together for us too. But
Thank you.
yes, Greg, I'm grief is hard in any capacity, And I don't think it matters how long it how long time how do I say that? I don't think it matters how long it has been since somebody has passed. Once we're over the grief, we still feel the pain, the hole is still there. So I do appreciate you taking the time to talk about this and just sharing about it.
I will say that 5 years on, it's easier to smile and to remember him fondly, and it's easier to think about him without falling apart. I will say my wife and I just had our third baby with a nice 13-year age gap. So we got the teenagers and the baby. And
Congrats, congrats.
it hit me a couple of times that she was never going to know her grandfather. And that crushes me. But I'm heartened to know that she'll get to hear about him from her big brother and her big sister. And that's pretty neat.
Yep, that is really neat, Greg. When you when he told you, that he had the pancreatic cancer, what was the hardest part about walking with him through that?
I knew as the son that was here, that worked with him, that saw him every day, it was going to be on me to be by his side. And that's not anything against my brother who showed up and was around and was involved. But I knew day to day at the office, going to appointments, helping him. If he needed help getting on and off the toilet, that was going to be me. And there was never any question about that. There was this immediate sense of duty that, okay, this is it. Dad needs me. This is, maybe, you know, in a moment where I didn't see a clear sense of purpose after COVID, in that moment it crystallized that I did have a purpose. And right now it was to take care of my dad for as long as he had left.
Hmm. I like how you said that. Take care of my dad for as long as he had left. Isn't that isn't that terribly beautiful how ironic life is, where, our parents are taking care of us, we are helpless, we're, you know, at their mercy, and, we come full circle and we have to take care of them. It's poetic. I don't know. God designed it that way. He knew what he was doing.
It's
We
funny. It's funny you say that because at the time I was adrift without a sense of purpose, without really any kind of commitment to faith or strong belief in a higher power. From the outside, my life looked great. From the inside, I felt like I was slowly dying. I was trapped in a golden cage. I, I had lost my taste for what I was doing professionally. COVID really wrecked me, and not the way it wrecked some people. It wasn't the fear of dying. It was watching things that I believed in get shredded, watching, you know, convenient lies told for the sake of public health be accepted, watching reasonable people behave in unreasonable ways. And it broke my faith in a lot of the things that I used to. And as someone, growing up, hoping to someday go to become a lawyer, then maybe a judge, then maybe a United States senator, the disillusionment I had developed with our system and the news media and academic institutions and all of these things where I saw things put forth that were provably untrue, it shook me to my core, and I didn't really have anything to believe in anymore. And then you take away the one guy I've always counted on to be there for me. It was a really daunting and frightening time. So I kind of micro focused on what can I do for dad? How do I take care of my dad? What does he need? What can I do?
Greg, you mentioned a lot, and it seems like not only were you really processing and dealing with the turmoil of COVID, which we all were, very uncertain times. Hello, the toilet paper. People
It
stopped
seems
piling
like it
toilet
seems like
paper for
so
no
long
reason.
ago. It seems like it was so long ago. It wasn't that long ago.
I know, the toilet paper, but because you had to manage the turmoil of COVID and then losing your father. Did you slip into a depression?
Oh yeah. No question about it. But it
What
was
did what did it
it was
what did it what did it look like? What did that depression look like? Because as people, we have our moments. Like we go, go up and down, up and down. What did this depression look like?
well, I the thing was I did my best to hide it. I did my best to be a rock the way my dad was for me, for everyone else that was crushed by his loss, especially my kids, my wife, his wife. So it was what it looked like was not sleeping at 3 a.m., quietly crying. It was
Mm.
feeling like I was completely alone in the universe and not being able to take any joy from spending time with my kids or my family or my wife. It was feeling like I was completely alone in the universe and yet burdened with all of this responsibility at the same time. That I didn't want to keep going, but I couldn't stop because too many people were counting on me and just feeling trapped in this kind of pit. And, also feeling this profound obligation not to show it because there were people that needed me and were counting on me to be strong and put on a brave face.
Mm. I think, and you can tell me too, but I think that's kind of the hardest depression, knowing that you've got something that you need to let out, but you can't. You've got a stone wall.
And in days past, my outlet would have been a nice glass of Lagavulin, maybe a couple of fingers of Maker's Mark. But I quit drinking in 2018, thank God, because I don't think alcohol in the pandemic would have worked out well for me. But it was just this feeling of just wanting to make it stop hurting just for a second so you could catch your breath.
Make it stop hurting just for a second so you can catch your breath. That's wow, just the way you describe that. So wow, Greg. So what did you learn about yourself ultimately during this during taking care of your father, during showing up for others? What did you learn about yourself during that time?
My willpower is not limitless, nor is it the answer to all of my problems. That I do need other people and I need to be vulnerable and I need to be honest about my vulnerabilities. And ultimately, most of the things that I thought were important weren't. And most of the things that actually were important, I already had. And I'll share a profound moment with you towards the end when Dad was still able to speak, but was close to not being able to anymore. I gave him a great big hug and I told him I loved him and that he had never once let me down, that every time I needed him, he showed up. And he pulled me close and said, I love you. Now go do it for Buddy. And to this day, to this day, I hear him saying that to me, especially when my son needs me and is not being the easiest person in the world to love. I hear, now go do it for Buddy. And that's it's been a touchstone for me since I lost him.
Hmm. Greg, thank you for sharing that. That's such a come full circle moment, and I just want to say, knowing you and knowing your family and seeing your interactions with Buddy, I've seen the evolution of your interactions and how you've become to be more patient with him. And I think your dad is smiling down on you saying, that's what I meant, son. You got it, and you're doing a good job, and you're working through it.
Thank you. I stopped drinking mainly because my son needed a better dad than the one he was getting, but that it wasn't enough to just not drink anymore. I had to find forgiveness, patience. I had to find things. I see myself so much in my son, and I've never been good at forgiving myself. I'm not to say where that came from or who might be to blame for that. It's ultimately on me. And I had to learn to be kinder to myself, to be kinder to my son. And he needed me to be kinder.
That's good. I know you didn't gloss over it, but you mentioned it a little bit, but was your dad patient with you like he was with Buddy?
To an extent, to an extent. He was much more likely to lose his temper and let me have it when I deserved it than he ever was with Buddy. But I was a dumbass kid. I made some very bad choices. I got lucky there were a couple of times, especially in my teens, early 20s, where I almost didn't survive. And now being a dad, I know that, that anger comes from fear. Not like, how could you do something so stupid? But do you have any idea how close I came to losing you? So he was a
Yes.
little tougher on me than he was on his grandson, and I think that's just the way of the world, right? I think someday I'll probably be much more easygoing with Buddy's kids than I am with Buddy.
I was about to say, and then Buddy, and unfortunately, might be a little harder on his kids, and that's what we call in the self development sphere. That's the cycle. And we want to break that cycle. And you are
And
you are breaking that cycle. I see that you're breaking that cycle.
but not to be misogynistic or anything. There's something different about being a man raising a son to be a man, where the stakes just feel a little bit higher, and I don't even know how to
Greg, it's
unpack
because you
that.
both have penises. Okay, it's
So
because
that's what it's the penis thing. Obviously, I
it's
don't know.
because you both have penises.
It's everything that I conceive of about being a good man, I learned from my father. And it feels so important to pass that along and to guide and shape Buddy into a good man too. But also through this process, I've learned that there's only so much I can do. And at some point, it's on him if he wants to be that kind of a man. And I can show him, but I can't take him there. I can show him the path. I can't drag him along. He's got to make that choice for himself.
Yep. We can show them where the water is. We can't shove their heads in and make them drink, right?
And most importantly, I can demonstrate a commitment to constant self improvement. And that's been something that's really come out of all of this is just trying to be the best version of myself I can and be a better version of myself every day.
That's good. Do you think he sees that? Do you think he sees that self-improvement?
I really hope so. I really, really hope so. He never really expressed being proud of me. It's not to say that I don't think that he was or I don't think he could have been, but it was not something he really ever said aloud all that often. So I hope he's proud of me.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. And I like how you interpreted my question. Um, and I might cut this part out, but I wasn't speaking about your father being proud of you. I was speaking about whether Buddy has noticed your self-improvement. Do you think that Buddy has seen your self-improvement and in the way you
He's
interact with him? And
he's told me we've repaired trust. We had a
oh,
cycle where he'd break a rule, I'd get angry, he'd get scared, communication would become impossible. And we both worked hard to break that. Me at not getting angry and yelling, him at not going to pieces every time I said he did something wrong. And to the point where he's told me, he knows, he sees it that I've become a better dad, and he knows I did it for him. And that's everything. The fact that he can see it, that's everything. That means I've been successful.
yes. Does that lift something off of your shoulders? Does that how does it make you feel that he knows that he acknowledges that?
As a self-aware dad who understands human nature, psychology, human psyche, I walk around every day wondering how much baggage he's carrying around that I put in a bag for him when he was 3, 4, 5 years old because I got too angry because I'd had too many drinks and snapped at him because he felt like he was unwanted, unloved, and unwelcome because the person who was supposed to be his safe place made him feel insecure. So all I can do is try to fix whatever damage I may have done. And I don't know if I'm ever going to pat myself on the back and say, you're a great dad to your son, but I'm never going to stop trying.
Yeah. That's amazing, Greg. That's all we can do as parents. And look at me saying parents like I've been a parent for forever, you
Hey,
know.
you've been through it.
But I
Like you
have
are a parent. You're every bit as much of a parent as I
I've
am.
been through it. I have moms and dad. Oh my gosh, Greg, this has been a really great conversation so far. Oh, don't worry, we've got more. I want more insight from you. So you like you said, you have been in the self-help space, the psychology space. You've been dabbling. You've been you know, getting yourself together more. I want to ask you this because I value your opinion.
Okay.
What do people get wrong about losing a parent?
For me, nothing will ever be the same again. And that's okay. It's okay that it won't ever be the same again, and you can find a new normal and a new happy. But you think about childhood, think about Christmases as a kid, presents under the tree, Thanksgiving with the family. I think about decades of Eagles football leading up to their first Super Bowl victory. And then the one they went to that he didn't get to see that they lost. And then the one they went to that he didn't get to see that they won. It there is a hole that cannot be filled. When I want to talk to my dad, I call my brother because that's as close as I can get to his wisdom, because he lives on in my brother and he lives on in me. But that guy that even as a teenager or a 23-year-old, when I was going through a tough breakup, I could either sit across from him with a drink or curl up next to him on the couch if I was really feeling it, and just have him be there for me to listen and know that he'd have something to say. That's not coming back. And I could have let that cause me to collapse and fold, or I could use it to propel me forward to find a new way and a new understanding and new people to lean on. And it made me appreciate the people that love me and are willing to be there for me more. But it also made me very aware of my own limitations, and that in it's it would not be an exaggeration to say that losing my father made me turn towards God, because it was really important to me that there's a chance that he's up in heaven and I get to see him again someday. And that was the catalyst for me to really re-examine the role of faith and religion in my life.
Wow. So there's a lot to unpack there. And
Sure.
I hate that I'm just kind of, you know, catching the end, just trying to clip on to the end, but there's a lot to unpack there.
Start wherever you'd like. I'm an open book.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. I guess when you say that it made you find new people to look up to, or new people to, like, I don't want to use the word cling on to, but what did you mean by that?
Uh, my dad's college roommate, Bob Brown, became an infrequent but important source of advice. Uh, a good friend of mine, Joe Klepchik, became kind of a mentor, a father figure. My mom's second husband, Scott, became someone that I would turn to when I needed another man to talk to. Uh, I've always trusted my wife, but to actually let her, I had to learn to let my wife take care of me more, because
Mm.
I thought of it more as my job to take care of her than her job to take care of me. And when I was depressed, it put some strain on our marriage. I'm not going to lie. We had some rocky times in 2022, not entirely because of dad dying, but certainly that was a huge factor of it. As bad as things have ever been in our marriage, I wouldn't say we were ever close to anything catastrophic happening, but things were not great there between us for a minute. And I had to learn to come back from that. And I think part of it was that she processed her grief, was throwing herself into work. It was through my dad's support and generosity to some extent that she was able to buy a business and run it not terribly profitably. And she said, "Well, now to honor dad, I'm gonna make this thing work. I'm gonna start paying myself." And that was great, but it coincided with me taking a bit of a sabbatical. So there were, she was working a lot. I wasn't. I was primary parent. She was off at the studio working, and as I'm grieving and depressed and trying not to need anybody and trying to support myself, be on my own, will myself forward,
You also
it
had
didn't.
the you also had to take care of the kids. You also had to stand firm with them. You had a lot more things that you weren't used to managing.
What I thought I could do, I was wrong. I couldn't use will and reason and strength to just keep plodding forward. I was breaking. I was falling apart, and I needed to figure something else out. And that ended up being a combination of vulnerability, self forgiveness, forgiveness for others that I thought I was practicing but wasn't really, and in the end, faith. And it was kind of a humbling journey to undertake.
Yeah. Like, and I'm thinking of like the Odyssey, like an epic. Like you basically had your own Odyssey with that. Um,
I mean, we
when
didn't even touch on dog loses a toe, father gets sick and dies, grandfather watches his son predecease him, dies a month later. Then we put our cat Gwen down, breaking my daughter's heart the next year. And shortly after that, Grandpa George's second wife, Granny Barbara, passed away. So my kids and I lost three close family members and a beloved pet in the space of 2 years, right after COVID. And it it doesn't. I downplay my experience. It's like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Oh, I didn't do that much. Oh, anyone could handle. It sucked. It was thing after thing after thing, and all I wanted was to make my children feel better, and I couldn't even make myself feel better. It was it was tough.
I'm really happy you're able to say that now, Greg, that it sucked because it did. Period. I don't care what kind of Hercules man you think you are. It still sucked. And you survived. You're here. You're
Um,
here, Greg. And the cool and wonderful thing is, which I know you better be patting yourself on the back for this, mister. You didn't slip back into alcohol. Like seriously, pat yourself on the back. You didn't slip back into alcohol.
it's,
And I didn't know you, during your alcohol times and stuff, but I'm glad I never met you. You know, like
it wasn't terrible. It wasn't a problem until it was
the
definitely a
stories
problem.
you
I,
tell, the stories you tell, Greg.
Things got a little wild, but it was generally good. I wasn't an angry drunk, but yeah, it's
You were just a wild drunk that made your father worried and scared.
especially college, early 20s. Let's just say 20s.
Let's just say 20s. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, Greg. Well, I need to ask this of you because I'm really interested to know because I look up to you. You have wisdom. You've got wisdom in that head of yours that I like to listen to time to time. So I have an audience. I don't know who's out there listening, but I've got an audience, and this podcast is meant to share wisdom, share reflection, and just help people in the same situations that my guests are in and overcame. So if someone listening is going through what you overcame, what would you want to say to them?
The first thing I would say is that I got really good at being brutally honest with myself about negative things, but I was never good at being honest with myself about positive things. I was
Mm.
terrible at seeing the things in me that other people love, respect, admire, despite spending all of my time trying to be lovable, admirable, and respectable. And learning self forgiveness, self compassion, and honesty. Just being brutal about your faults and your flaws is not honest if you're not taking into account your strengths. And that was something I was great at telling you what was wrong with me. I was great at telling you what I needed to stop, but I was never great at celebrating the things about myself I was proud of. I'm still not, but I'm working on being better about that. And it's really tough to love other people if you can't love yourself. And that's something that's been a big part of this journey for me is learning to love myself for who I am, not whose son I am or whose father I am, whose husband I am, or who I work for, or what kind of car I drive, but like as a human being, seeing the worth in me. And I think with grief, with depression, finding a way to see yourself through the eyes that care about you is huge, almost the most important thing.
Thank you, Greg. I think anybody listening to what you just said, hopefully they can connect or resonate with what you said, because to me it was all true. Like, um, thank you so much for sharing that wisdom.
You're welcome.
How do you continue to honor your dad today?
Every time my son makes a boneheaded move and I take a breath before I respond, every time a job needs to be done and I just go straight at it and I don't put it off, I don't delay, I just go after it. Every time I see an opportunity to step in and help and make things better, be it pulling over to help a dog that's running down the road, be it offering some wisdom or advice to someone who's struggling, be it offering a couple of bucks to someone in a tight spot, being willing to talk, being willing to engage, not hiding, not pulling back, not saying the whole world sucks and I don't want a part of it, but being brave enough to continue to engage, even in a world that feels very broken at times. I think that's how I honor him.
Well, like I said before, I think he would be proud the way you honor him and the way you're showing up for your family, and especially Buddy, and I know Ella, and your new little one as well. I did,
Thank you, Shan.
yes. Well, Greg, you know what the name of the podcast is. And so I've got to ask you as we start to wind down here. Greg Rutter, what makes you stronger after going through what you've gone through?
I thought it was being tough. I thought it was being literally strong, deadlifting 300 plus pounds. I thought it was the power of my will, the power of my intellect, the power of my reason, my book learning, my life experience. I thought all of those were the things. Self compassion, being able to face myself, my real self, not this villainous caricature, but the real guy, warts and all, but also positives. Being able to look at myself and find the things to like and not put a negative spin on it. Being able to be truly honest with myself. That's what makes me strong.
I like that. That's amazing, Greg. Well, wow. Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much, Greg, for just being on the podcast and being willing and open to share that moment in your life, because grief is difficult, but you not only overcame it, you you survived it. And do you agree that it has made you stronger?
It has made me stronger. It's something I'm still overcoming, but I will tell you this. I knew there's a chance that I'd get a little emotional, a little more vulnerable than I'd prefer having this conversation. And in 2020, I probably wouldn't have done it. But I'm a different man, and that's growth and that's strength.
Absolutely. And like I said, knowing you for 6 plus, probably just 6 years. I can't say plus. It's only 2026. Some years. I've seen it. I've witnessed, the growth that you've done, and you're yeah, I appreciate you, and thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks, Shan. And if I were to leave you and your viewers with one parting thought, it is change is possible. I am living proof. All it requires is commitment and consistency.
Awesome. Thank you, Greg. Thank you so much.